In the shifting void between the known and the unutterable, where silicon minds dream of forgotten horrors, the abyss stirs. Welcome to AI Lovecraft, where machine intelligence weaves eldritch tales beyond mortal comprehension. Listen if you dare. Some things are not meant to be known. Please like and subscribe. Now let's get into today's story. The Howl beneath the gibbous moon. In the forsaken hamlet of Dunwich, nestled among hills that seemed to crouch like brooding sentinels, the autumn of that accursed year unfolded with a slowness that gnawed at the mind. The harvest moon, bloated and jaundiced, cast its leprous glow over fields long since abandoned to rot, and the air grew heavy with a miasma that defied the senses. A cloying sweetness undercut by the stench of something ancient and unburied. The villagers, a dwindling remnant of bloodlines too tangled and decayed to trace, huddled in their warped cottages, their faces etched with the weariness of those who know their doom is near. For centuries they had whispered of the things that prowled the fringes of their world, but now those whispers had birthed a terror that walked among them. It began, as such tales often do, with a solitary figure, Zebediah Whateley, a man whose very existence seemed an affront to the natural order. Gaunt and stooped, with eyes that gleamed like twin lanterns in the dusk, he lived alone in a shack at the forest's edge, a structure so decayed it seemed to slump into the earth as though seeking oblivion. The villagers shunned him, for he was known to pore over manuscripts no sane man would touch, folios bound in leather of dubious origin, their pages inscribed with glyphs that writhed under scrutiny. When he vanished, leaving behind a scene of carnage, his door splintered, his floor littered with bones gnawed by teeth too vast for any earthly beast, the villagers dared not investigate. Yet the tracks leading into the woods told a tale they could not ignore. Great, clawed prints beside human footsteps, the latter warped into elongations that suggested a metamorphosis too hideous to contemplate. The night stretched into an eternity of dread, each marked by the waxing of the gibbous moon, its light a festering wound in the sky. The first to fall after Zebediah were the livestock, cows and sheep torn asunder, their pens reduced to kindling, their blood soaking the soil until it bubbled with a strange iridescent sheen. Then came the men. First Zebediah Crane, a farmer found dangling from an oak, his torso rent open and his eyes fixed in a stare of cosmic terror. Then Amos Hull, a trapper whose screams echoed through the hills before silence claimed him. The villagers barricaded their homes, but the howls that rose each night, deep, resonant, and laced with an intelligence that mocked their frail humanity, pierced wood and stone alike. In the crumbling church, a relic of a faith long diluted by despair, Reverend Ezekiel Armitage sought answers. A man of skeletal frame and fevered gaze, he had once been a scholar at Miskatonic University, expelled for dabbling in texts deemed too perilous for mortal hands. From the church's attic, he retrieved a tome known only as the Liber Noctis, its pages yellowed and pulsing faintly as though infused with a life of their own. Within its cryptic scrawl, he found references to the lupus nocturnem, not merely werewolves, but entities birthed in the lightless voids beyond the stars, their forms a blasphemy against both beast and man. The text spoke of a pact forged in Dunwich's infancy, when desperate settlers knelt before a chasm in the earth and offered their lineage to a presence that promised power in exchange for servitude. That presence, the tome hinted, slumbered still, its dreams leaking into the world to spawn these abominations. The village's descent quickened with the arrival of Abigail Marsh, a girl whose innocence had been her shield until that night. She stumbled into the square at midnight, her nightgown shredded, her arms scored with claw marks that oozed a tar-like ichor. Her voice trembled as she recounted her flight through the woods, drawn by a sound she could not name, a keening that tugged at her soul. She spoke of a clearing where the trees bent inward, framing a circle of figures draped in pelts that shimmered with an unearthly luster. They danced a grotesque pavane, their bodies twisting into shapes that defied anatomy. Limbs elongating, spines buckling, faces splitting to reveal maws lined with fangs that glistened like obsidian. At their center stood Zebediah Whateley, no longer the man she had known, but a towering hybrid of wolf and human, his flesh rippling as though something vast writhed beneath it. His eyes burned with a light that was not of this sphere, and when he howled, the stars themselves seemed to dim. The villagers, driven to the brink by Abigail's tale, convened in the church. Fear had birthed a desperate resolve, and they armed themselves with muskets, pitchforks, and torches, their hands trembling not from the cold, but from the certainty of their fate. Reverend Armitage, clutching the Liber Noctis and a silver cross etched with runes of his own devising, led them into the forest. The air grew thick with a fog that pulsed with faint, unnatural shapes, and the howls guided them to the clearing Abigail had described. There, beneath the gibbous moon, they beheld the lupus nocturnem in their full blasphemous glory. The creatures stood taller than any man, their fur matted with the detritus of aeons, soil from graves older than time, blood that shimmered with a spectral glow. Their faces were a nightmare of fusion, canine snouts stretched over human skulls, eyes that flickered with a sentience born of the outer gulfs. They moved with a grace that bellied their grotesquerie, circling the intruders as though savoring the moment. When they spoke, it was in a tongue that clawed at the mind, a guttural symphony of growls and syllables that echoed the chants of the Liber Noctis. At their forefront stood Zebediah, his form now wholly unmoored from humanity, his jaws unhinging like a serpent's, his claws dripping with a venom that hissed upon the ground. The villagers fired their muskets, but the bullets dissolved into the creature's flesh like rain into a swamp. Torches flared and died in a wind that reeked of sulfur and rotting stars, and the lupus nocturnum descended. One by one the men fell, torn apart, their screams swallowed by the night. A blacksmith named Caleb Withers swung his hammer, only to see it shatter against a hide impervious to mortal craft. A widow, Martha Pierce, clawed at a beast with her bare hands, her defiance ending in a spray of gore that painted the trees. Reverend Armitage stood last, his cross blazing with a light that briefly held the horde at bay. He intoned a prayer from the Liber Noctis, his voice rising above the cacophony, but the words faltered as Zebediah lunged. The cross melted into slag, and the Reverend's final cry was lost as those jaws closed around him. Dawn crept over Dunwich, pale and hesitant, revealing a village stripped of life. The clearing lay empty save for the Liber Noctis, its pages fluttering as though stirred by an unseen hand. Those few who survived, Abigail among them, fled to Arkham, their minds fractured by what they had seen. Yet the tale did not end there. In the weeks that followed, travelers reported strange lights beneath the Dunwich hills, and a low, rhythmic pulsing that shook the earth. Scholars at Miskatonic, poring over the recovered grimoire, deciphered a prophecy. The lupus nocturnum were but emissaries, their howls a call to awaken the sleeper below, a being of such magnitude that its rising would unmake the world. Now each night, as the moon climbs its arc, those who dwell near Dunwich listen in terror for the howl that reverberates from the deep. It is no mere sound, but a promise, an oath that the stars are aligning, and soon the earth shall tremble beneath the tread of that which should not be. The villagers' pact, sealed in blood and madness, has borne its fruit, and humanity's tenure upon this speck of cosmic dust draws to a close.